welcome or welcome back to Bookmark Chronicles. Today I'm doing my March wrap-up. I did not read as much as I have been reading in the past couple of months with the end of term, switching jobs, and just a bunch of other things, but still read a good amount, so let's get started. The first book that I read in March was Internment by Samira Ahmed. I listened to this on Libby. In this, we follow a young Muslim girl named Layla. It's right after the 2016 election, and it follows the path of what could have very likely been our reality since 45 wanted to implement a Muslim ban. So in Layla's town, books are being burned, there is a very strict curfew, and then one night, men in suits come to her house and tell her family that they're being relocated. They get sent to an internment camp with a bunch of other Muslim families, and we follow them from there. What I loved about this book is how bold she was with the narrative, because the events in this book very easily could have happened if the former president had gotten his way, and I like that she didn't sugarcoat any of it. So while I loved the plot and the concept of this book, unfortunately, I did not like Layla for a million reasons, including the fact that while I appreciate that she was bold and outgoing and outspoken, she was also very naive. And before somebody says, oh, but she's a teenager, being young is not synonymous with being dumb. Just putting that out there. She did things knowing that it wasn't the right time and very easily could have gotten herself killed, and I didn't like how reckless she was being. On top of that, there was an unnecessary romance, and I really can't even talk too much about that because I don't want to spoil it, but that in and of itself just ruined the story for me. It would have had such a greater impact if that had been left out instead of being the sole focus, because with everything going on, nobody really has time for this romance. It's kind of like in the Hunger Games. Katniss is fighting for her life, but let's throw in a love triangle. It really didn't make sense. But I would recommend this if you like the rebel trope or found family vibes. I rated this 3.5 stars. The next book that I read was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. In this, we follow Rin, who is a war orphan of the Second Poppy War. She hasn't had the best life living with her foster family, so she decides that she wants to get out. She wants to study really hard to get into the best military academy in the country so that she can avoid having to be married to someone who's 3 times older than her. For 2 years, she studies really hard, takes the test, and manages to get the highest score in her province, and then she's sent off to the academy. While she's studying, though, the Third Poppy War breaks out, so she has to cut her training short and start fighting on the front lines. I really enjoyed this book. It gave me a lot of feelings. I didn't necessarily like Rin, but it was hard not to root for her, even if I didn't always agree with her. I do have a full review of this, so if you want more of my thoughts, I will link that in the cards and the description below. Otherwise, I would recommend this if you are interested in war stories and you like the found family trope. But with that comes content warnings for sexual assault and extreme violence and body horror. I did rate this 4.75 stars, and I will be reading The Dragon Republic in April. The next book that I read was King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. I thought I was gonna like this. I thought it was gonna be a 5-star read. I was ready for Nikolai all the time, but that's not what we got, and this was a huge disappointment. In this, we follow Nikolai, Zoya, and Nina following the events of the Shadow and Bone trilogy and the Six of Crows duology. I was under the impression that we were going to get Nikolai 24/7. Zoya, cool. A little bit of Nina, great. Nice to see what she's got going on. But I really didn't enjoy the first half with Nina's storyline for reasons. And then everything was going well at one point, but then something happens and you're just like, what the fuck is going on? And then you get to the end and you're like, what the fuck is going on? I'm just so confused about this, honestly. I'm not confused. I understood everything that was going on. I just don't know why. Because this is not at all what I expected. And like, I know it's a fantasy series, but why? I don't know. Of course, I'm still gonna read Will of Wolves. I did pre-order it. This just was not at all what I wanted, what I expected. And I'm really interested to see how she's going to fix it in about 500 pages. So yeah, unfortunately, I only rated this 2.75 stars. Now is the perfect time for a reminder of the Grishavers live show that I'm hosting here on my channel with Dasha from Mythic Pages and Robin from Robin Reads, Saturday, April 10th at 7 p.m. EST. So if you want to hear more of our thoughts on King of Scars, Six of Crows, and Shadow and Bone, as well as our predictions for the TV show, be sure to join us. The next book that I read was Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. This is my first time reading a graphic novel. I did put this on a previous TBR in like December of 2020 and never got to it, but it's okay because I finally finished it. So this is pretty much just a memoir of her life growing up in Iran, in the war breaking out, and following her and her family and all the events that happened during that time. It is very interesting, very informative, and I really appreciated that because, again, as an American, we really don't learn much about things that happen elsewhere in the world because our education system is so American-centric, and I just really appreciated learning about another country and the customs and culture and what it's like. I did enjoy this for the most part. There were some parts where I was just like, why did you do that? Or why did you think that was a good idea? But it's literally her life, so I can't argue with it. I rated this 3 stars, and I think I will give the movie a watch. The last book that I read in March was Henrietta and Eleanor. This is described as a modern retelling of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So I had not previously read Jekyll and Hyde, so I just did me some Googles and looked up what the story was about so that I could have a little bit of background information. In this one though, obviously it's gender swapped and it takes place in modern day London. I really enjoyed listening to this. It is an Audible original, so it's only available on Audible. But the audiobook itself was very well done. And maybe this is just new to me, but I've never experienced an audiobook like this. So instead of it just sounding like people recording their voices separately, it sounded more like you were listening to a movie. Like the background noises and the music really immersed you in the story. And it was just little details that I picked up on that I really enjoyed. So say 2 people are having a conversation and the TV's on in the background, you can hear the news story. Or if they're outside on the sidewalk, you can hear someone's footsteps or cars driving by. If they just finished dinner, you can hear the sound of a fork being laid down on a plate. Just little things like that that I really enjoyed, and I've never read an audiobook that does that. So I really enjoyed that because it was like a completely new experience. And because I enjoyed that so much, I ended up rating it 4.25 stars. The story itself was enjoyable, but also just because of the experience created by the audiobook, I just had to rate it a little higher than I was anticipating. So those are all of the books that I read in March. Let me know if you have read any of these or if they are on your TBR. Otherwise, that's all I have for you today, and I'll see you in the next video.